For startups with sky-high ambitions, Dubai is the runway to the world. A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. I'm Ritwika Gupta and you're watching our special series Eye on Dubai, where we explore how Dubai is opening new doors for businesses with its innovation, infrastructure and investor-friendly vision. From scaling startups to shaping the future of venture capital, in the first segment we get chatting with Nour Prince, partner Nuwa Capital, to decode Dubai's rise as a magnet for innovation and investment. In the second segment, we are in conversation with Ankit Dwivedi, VP International Business, Porter.
Dubai is fast becoming a vibrant hub for women investors thanks to its progressive policies, tax-friendly ecosystem, and access to high-growth sectors like fintech, real estate, and sustainability. From venture capital to startups and cross-border trade, the city is seeing a surge in female-led investment activity. With platforms like DIFC's FinTech Hub and the Dubai Future Accelerators, Indian women entrepreneurs are finding the tools and networks to scale globally. As female representation grows across industries, Dubai is setting a new benchmark for inclusive growth and opportunity. To understand this shift and what it means for the future of investment, we spoke to Nour Prince, partner at Nuwa Capital.
Stephanie, welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me.
So Stephanie, Dubai has evolved into a global hub for investment, entrepreneurship, innovation. Tell me what makes this destination particularly attractive for startups and investors?
If you trace the history of the ecosystem here, and maybe in the broader region, I think Dubai became the epicenter of tech entrepreneurship around 2014, 2015, and really around the launch of the National Innovation Strategy. And so that meant free zones, that meant making it easier to launch businesses, changes to the visa schemes, and so on. I think for us, our view is that it all starts with talent, and when you build a hub that attracts the right talent that's becoming more and more diverse, the result is you have businesses that are not just scaling into Dubai, but increasingly launching in Dubai because you've built the ecosystem, the necessary ecosystem infrastructure.
Yeah, so tell me something, when you are evaluating a particular startup and when you're considering it for investment, what are the top few qualities that you're looking out for?
I think that's a really good question, and I'll tell you why. Out of our first fund, it's an early stage fund, and increasingly we are seeing deals first and early, very, very early. So we're very relationship driven, and for us, it all starts again with the founder. So when you're investing at pre-seed, there's often very realistically very little to look at beyond the founder. So we've mapped what we think are characteristics of a potentially very successful founder. And when we start conversations, it's often obviously beyond the basics of, do we think there's a market for it? Does it fit our mandate? Does it have a viable business case in the region? Is there founder market fit? So do we like you for what you're building?
Sure. Is
one. I would say the second is, have you thought of a clear path to scale? And it's not necessary whether that will eventually be the path that your company took to scale, but can you articulate what the plan will look like, how you'll address your potential customers, how you'll build a team? If you're someone who has that sort of industry expertise or leverage, if you've lived the problem, then you'll go through walls to solve it.
Sure.
And then I think the last one, which is really important, is at the very early stage, you're maybe a few months, a year into cooking up the business. A lot can happen in a few years. So are you adaptable? Can you respond to the market when it makes sense? Do you know when to take feedback and when maybe not to take feedback? Because as investors, we're very big on value creation. It's hard to build in our markets. I think people underestimate the GCC or maybe think of it as one economic block, but it's not. You know, launching a business here, scaling it to different markets, hiring looks very different. Talent pools exist, are very diverse and exist in different pockets. So we work very closely with the founders, but we don't run your business on your behalf. So we still need to see that you're someone who can learn and can become even better at what you want to build.
Fantastic. There's also a rise in women entrepreneurs, women in business, women leaders, and investors as well, right? What do you think, makes Dubai the perfect destination for women in wealth?
I think the point is Dubai is quite intersectional. So you're seeing the result of a cross-pollination, a lot of people moving into the region. Some of those are women who become entrenched into the space. They launch their own businesses with time. Once they know the market well enough, they angel invest, they join different networking groups. So that's in terms of cross-pollination, but also there is more women representation in the space. Is there enough women representation in the space? No. So I want to be very clear on that. But there's more women representation in the space. When I started my career, and I think this is true for any one of my generation and generations before, almost all the time I was the only woman in the room.
Right.
And I think that didn't even faze me. I didn't even notice it.
Right.
And I think until the point where I start noticing it, where it starts becoming the exception, then we still have a lot of work to do. Right. More women representation in the space across the capital stack, so that goes back to my point on angel investors moving here, but also wealth being created or wealth being inherited where women start investing means that the investment choices will become a bit more diverse, right? Sure. That's just a matter of fact. But I also think it creates more role models. So when you have someone who's a young recent graduate who looks at or joins an event or looks at what does the ecosystem look like in the region and sees that there are people who look and sound like her, it doesn't just give her an idea of a career path or a possible career path, but it gives her more color on the opportunity.
Right, absolutely. Stephanie, the theme for our show this season is powering entrepreneurs for the global stage. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs, startups, who would like to expand beyond their core markets, especially for Indian businesses who are looking to set up in, say, a city like Dubai?
It's a great time to ask that question. We are seeing a lot more of that. I think the GCC in Dubai particularly are becoming they're not becoming, they actually have become a global entrepreneurship hub. So they really exist in the founder's kind of long-term plan. Our view is, so we've always been a very regional investor. So we work very early with companies and know how difficult it can be to scale from your local market to different regional markets. And what we're seeing within our portfolio is companies today are also expanding into global markets. And so we have the muscle to kind of understand that. Our view is hire locally. We've seen companies that were coming from outside and sort of bringing their own teams, and I think that's great, but you do need to hire locally, because that brings me to my second point, which is it's very important to understand the different nuances. So even within the GCC market, so what works in Dubai might not necessarily work in Cairo, might not necessarily work in Riyadh, and you might have to retool some aspects of the business to make it work. And it's doable, but you also need to be mindful about that.
Right, absolutely. So Stephanie, with initiatives like Dubai Future Accelerators, DIFC's FinTech Hub, how do you see Dubai really reshaping the future of investment and finance?
I think what's very unique about Dubai is that it doesn't follow global trends. I think very often, if you look at it, it's been at the forefront of shaping these trends, and it's got a number of things working for it. It's uniquely positioned both geographically and strategically. I think you are working with buy-in from the top. So I don't think there are any markets I mean, outside of the region, between Dubai, Riyadh, and Doha today, but there's very few markets where you could say, I am co-creating with the government. It's to better understand what I'm working on and wants to build regulation that works for me and that protects me, protects my investors, protects my customers. And I think, Dubai's been doing that for a very long time, and there's different permutations of it. Today, you and I are discussing the tech ecosystem, but it's also been doing that in real estate and other facets of the economy. Dubai almost functions like a startup, where it's consistently evolving. Not only has it become easier to launch a business, but it's also become cheaper to launch a business. So today you have more people who are actually launching from the onset in Dubai and then scaling to different markets. Geographically, you have access to some of the largest markets in the world within a 5 to 8 hour radius. So it's almost the perfect place to build. Yeah.
Right, fantastic. AI is impacting industries across the board. How do you think artificial intelligence is impacting the venture capital space?
I would say for us, there's at least 3 clear ways today. The first one is operational. So we've spent a lot of time, and this is kind of like a living organism. We spent a lot of time adapting or using AI in different facets of our day-to-day. So it makes us more productive, but also more efficient. And that's through different platforms that are out of the box, but also through kind of hacking together our own systems. I think the second layer of that, where it starts to get really interesting, is we've built a proprietary deal flow engine, and a lot of that today is driven by AI. And so it does, we have a set of characteristics that we like in founders. And so that now has been embedded into our AI structure.
Finally, Stephanie, you mentioned earlier that there needs to be a greater representation of women in business. As one of the leading women leaders globally, tell me, what sort of changes would you like to see? What sort of key steps do you think needs to be taken in order to have a greater representation of more women, across industries?
So, the way I think about it, and again, to my earlier point, is when will it surprise us to actually be the only woman in the room? Right. And what needs to happen for us to reach that point? And so if you kind of work backwards from there, that means you need at least 3 things, right? One, there's a data point that I think people tend to focus on, which is, women get like an abysmal sliver of VC capital. Of total VC capital deployed, and the figure is like almost offensive to mention. Like, it's very, very small. But I don't think that's an accurate representation of what, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I don't really think it's an accurate representation of the depth of the work that we need to put in. Right. The issue starts with access. So in order to have more women able to come to a VC, to reach a VC and say, hey, I built a business, I think I'm ready to raise an external round, you need to be able to have access to that VC. You need to be able to have access to proper mentorship that allows you to build a business that is VC backable as well, because that's a reality. Not all businesses are VC backable, no matter who runs them, right? I also think that on that point, I think it's very important to pause a little bit and be very honest with ourselves.
Right, fantastic. Well, Stephanie, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.